right, ladies and gentlemen, everyone around and in between. This is Debate Sensei NFA LD edition, where we talk about things relevant to competitive Lincoln Douglas debate for the National Forensics Association. I have two resident experts with me, Dr. Justin Kirk from University of Nebraska at Lincoln, and Chad Meadows, the director of debate at Western Kentucky University. Thank you both for joining me.
It's good to be here.
Great to be here. Back after a long winter break.
Yeah. Well, let's start with that. What was walk me through kind of what happened. It's been a while. It's been a little while, right? And so I'm forgetting, the names of the most competitive people and stuff like that we were talking about last time. But what are some of the things that y'all did over the break?
I can start real quick. We attended back-to-back NDT tournaments in Kansas. So we did a little bit of a tour on the NDT CETA circuit. KU and K-State are about 3 hours from here. So it was a really close trip for us. Easy driving trip. And, those tournaments happen during our off season. So it's a good place to keep engines running. It's the same topic. So we got a lot of good AF and neg ideas out of those tournaments and stuff like that. And then just like file reorganization. We produced a lot of evidence in the fall, but none of it was very organized, and students kept asking where things were. So I spent about a week just like getting our files right, making sure things were where I knew they were going to be, and I could point people in the right direction.
All right. What about you, Chad? What were you guys doing?
Yeah, file organization is probably the biggest thing. You're at a tournament and things come up. You need, arguments to answer, whatever. And what file that gets put in the moment is up in the air. And so a lot of what I did over break was just figuring out all the work that we had done kind of like quickly, combining that with assignments and, all the like effort that had been put in. And, Dr. Kirk mentioned, just kind of like organizing it in a place that, hopefully everyone knows where it is. Now, am I still going to get the same questions? Where's X, Y, and Z? Probably. But now at least I know where it is and can answer that question a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So I was talking with a CETA coach, and they just had the Texas Open. We had a recap for that one, but you were saying that you went to some NDT tournaments, Justin. Does that going to fizzle out now? Is it like, are we switching gears and it's going to be all NFA now?
So our program is, we are primarily an NFA LD school, and we do NDT CETA as kind of a way to keep kids invested in the activity. So for us, once we get back into the Gorlock Grand Prix cycle, we tend to just kind of completely switch gears back to this stuff.
All right, well, let's do that then. Chad, why don't you tell me what is significant about the Gorlock Gala?
Yeah, so the Gorlock Gala is hosted by Webster University, which is in St. Louis, Missouri. And, I feel like the history of how it became a major tournament for NFA LD is pretty ubiquitous. It feels like it just kind of happened organically. It's in a city that's very central to the United States. It's something that pretty much everyone can get to. And then even if you can't, there's a good airport that's near it that you can fly to, pretty good airport. It's in January, right as everyone's getting back from break. So I think it just kind of sort of started, many years ago to kind of occupy the sort of like flagship tournament for NFA LD. I also think that, for us, it's the tournament that most closely resembles what NFA is going to look like. I think the schedule now has kind of condensed into a lot of tournaments that are like NFA LD only tournaments. That's not what NFA is like. Right. NFA is an NFA LD tournament with the speech tournament, and so is the Gorlock. So there's the same sort of challenges like long delays between rounds, a diverse judging pool that's, different than what you're going to see at, just LD only tournaments. And so I think a lot of teams, at least mine does, likes to use it as kind of like a reminder of like, don't sort of like get attached to the sort of like, okay, tournaments are rounds at 10, 12, 2, 4, and 6. right? Like that's not how they're all going to be, and certainly NFA. And so, I think it kind of just took on for a lot of teams that role of being like sort of like a national warm up.
I was just speaking about the other events that are offered at this. I was taking a look at that, and some of them I am completely unfamiliar with, like broadcast journalism, interviewing, improvisational pair. I mean, some of them had entries larger than the Open NFA LD entry. If you only just did the Open NFA LD entry, like how does that affect the dynamic of the tournament?
So I think a lot of that, from a like debater standpoint, it is kind of like Chad said, a lot of sitting around and waiting, and how to make yourself productive in these 4 or 5 hour gaps.
Got it.
Rounds or IPDA rounds are happening, because normally, like we said, a debate tournament rounds are back to back. You get maybe 20 or 30 minutes to reset, talk to your coaches, do a little bit of research. But now it's like, well, we've got 4 hours. We don't know who we're debating.
Right.
We don't know what our pairing or our judge is going to be. How can we be productive over the next few hours, knowing what we know from the last debate? So there's a lot of that, of like, you just kind of have to shift how you coach students, I think, a little bit, and like what the priorities should be from like round to round. The other thing I think that's really nice about the Gorlock is they do what I think a lot more tournaments that are full service tournaments both should be doing, and I think builds kind of a sense of community. They provide a lot more meals at the tournament.
So
they provide like lunch on the second day and dinner on the first day. And it's all like local stuff. So they bring in a bunch of local vendors to vend those things. So you get kind of taste of St. Louis kind of that goes along with the tournament. And as a food aficionado, I love that part of the tournament.
Oh, great.
Like, yeah, give me fried raviolis and hot dogs all day. And I'm here for it. But I also think it adds like it's like a character element to the tournament, right? Like people like to go to the Gorlock because there's a big keg of root beer and you get some ice cream and frozen custard at the end. And like there's a sense of community that exists there that you don't get at a ton of other regular season tournaments. That just has a special feel to it that feels a lot more like a major national,
Yeah, I was looking at the debate entry. It's specifically the Open. I think we gravitate towards the Open. Overall, there was over 60 entries, but for Open, there was 37. How does that compare to previous years as well as other tournaments?
It's smaller but stronger.
Okay.
I think that this Open pool, if you look at the JV and novice pools, that's where you can tell like those students are all going to move into Open in the next couple of years. And Gorlock, when I first joined the activity about 5-6 years ago, it was about 70 to 80 teams in Open. And we're headed back there. I think a lot of it is just kind of the COVID generation.
Oh.
You've got the kids who are still debating in Open are the ones who survived the COVID wave that are still debating. And then the JV and novices are the ones who came after. Right. So you've got this kind of gap of students. Like the other 30 or 40 students who should be at the Gorlock probably just don't debate anymore. Right. Because COVID, messed everything up.
Oh, interesting. You're getting fireworks. I don't know why that is.
I don't know why that is either.
Making fire points. So, my perspective on it is like, I think it's a combination of there are debaters who would be here that aren't here because of COVID. And also I think that I've noticed like a lot of teams kind of shift their tournament entry strategy. It used to be kind of like you just brought your whole team to every tournament. I think with most teams going to fewer total tournaments now because of COVID and there being fewer opportunities to qualify to nationals, you want to kind of like take kids to the Gorlock and other similar tournaments that like you think have a good chance of breaking. And so there's a lot of people that are going to show up to NFA that aren't going to go to the Gorlock because they need to save the tournaments that they can send their kids to be the ones that they're pretty confident they have a good chance to clear at so they can go to nationals.
Okay. And so you're saying are you saying that there's a bunch of students also that have already qualified and they're like, I don't need to do this? Does that happen?
We had a few. I mean, I had 3 or 4 students that had their quals and were just like, it's first week of classes. I don't think I can miss.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say students are today certainly a lot more sensitive to the missing class component of debate than certainly people were when I was debating. When I was debating, we were like all clawing to get out of class. But, as higher education has become more expensive and that investment becomes larger and more precious for families, I think there's a greater – this is a good thing, by the way, a greater appreciation for actually going to your classes and not letting something like debate trade off with it, which I think is important.
It's interesting because this form of debate has a very specific qualifying formula. right? Whereas like the NDT, like you get invited and you know that you've qualified once they invite you. But for this one, it's like, nope, there's a formula, and so it's kind of nice that way. But let's take a look at some of these entries here. It looks like so out of 37 teams, broke 16. That's finals, yeah. I always like starting. Was there any discussion about somebody who didn't make the cut and it was like a scandal or just a little chatter going on?
I don't know that there was a scandal about people who didn't clear, but I think given the nature of this tournament, right? Everybody's taking a couple months off.
Yeah.
B, you've got the top 4 or 5 debaters from every school here, right? Even if the entry from UNL or Wiki isn't as big as it will be at nationals, the best debaters on both teams were at this tournament, right? Like so the field is a lot more difficult. And so I think underperforming at the Gorlock is like not necessarily like, oh, they like got, they didn't do what we expected them to do, just because the rounds are more difficult. Round to round to round, you're going to be debating some of the best debaters in the country. So somebody who goes 3-3 at this tournament probably is going to go 5-1 or 4-2 at most other tournaments,
Okay.
And so I think that like saying someone underperformed at the Gorlock is almost saying like, well, they had 5 tough debates.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, I would say like for everyone but like our like top debater, it was kind of dictated by just like how hard were your rounds.
Okay. So who are some of the people that might you expect to break, but they didn't at this one?
Yeah, I would say that like somebody who was in my top 10 that definitely could have cleared was John Sims from North Texas. Had been having a really consistent and good season. But you can go back and look at their pairings and who did John Sims do? I mean, they debated really good debaters in the rounds that they lost. Like it wasn't like John was losing debates that were, not close. Or who was the other person I was looking at? Somebody had just one of the most difficult pairings I had seen in a while.
Open NFA LD.
Somebody debated like North Texas's second best debater, Washburn's second best debater, Truman's top debater, all like back to back in 3 rounds, and they only had 1 win. And so like you had debaters who were like 1-2 and 1-3 that were like will be clearing at nationals, just like lurking in the 1-3 division. Like I hope I don't get that debate. I hope I don't get that debate. And that's why the Gorlock was really tough. Right?
Yeah, it's hard to point out one person because I feel like there's like several people I could think of that like have done really well all year that like didn't clear at the Gorlock or went 3-3 at the Gorlock. I remember like a distinct feeling, I think after maybe like round 3, there's a big break and everyone's kind of like estimating where everybody is and being like the 1-2 division or the 1-2 is like harder than the 3-0. Like there was at some point where I was like, this is rough. I think a person that was in my top 10 that didn't, I don't think Cade cleared, did he?
Cade did not clear. Cade
that was a person that was like really high up on my list who did not clear.
But look at their pairings. I mean, Cade had just a brutal schedule that whole tournament. And so again, this tournament gives you that grain of salt that you have to kind of consider. I mean, another person I was thinking is like Nick Schengen from Western Kentucky, somebody who's cleared consistently at most tournaments this year, just 3-3, tough draw, Right. Round 6 going up against Grant from our school, like that's a top 10 versus top 10 debate for a break round,
For a break round, right. And I just like acknowledging them, it's like, people, man, I remember being like that my senior year, first 3 tournaments, like just missing on speaker points each time. It was just heartbreaking, you know what I mean? So just acknowledging it's like, yeah, you deserve to be out there, but so does all other 16 people that made it as well. So,
well, and I think the roughest part too is you only had 14 teams with a winning record. So 2 of the 12 debaters who had 3-3 records got in, but you didn't know until clears happened. So like a lot of that is like, oh, I went 3-3 and I think my speaks were good. So you're going to be 2 of the 12 that are 3-3 and get in.
Oh, wow.
Just another added kind of stressful element to the tournament too. I think.
Right. Anyone break out like maybe for their first time or maybe like this is like a breakout year for them? Maybe they broke once before, but it's kind of new to elims.
Yeah, I was going to say that like if I were to like make a narrative of this tournament, it would be like 2 big breakouts of people that haven't really been competing, I think, a lot on the NFA LD circuit this year, but are really talented and did very well. Sage Carter from Missouri Valley.
Okay.
She was the top seed, I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at that. Yeah.
Nice. And I think that she's been mostly doing policy this year, maybe also card. But she had an amazing tournament, made the semis, and she only lost to Zach Jones, I think, in the semifinals.
Yeah.
So Sage had a really amazing tournament. And then in the finals was Autumn Flory from Simpson.
Okay.
And I haven't seen her on the circuit either. Honestly, I thought she graduated.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, oh, I remember you. You're pretty good. I judged them twice. It was awesome because they were like, I don't think they debated much this year, and they were kind of like figuring it out, kind of on the fly. Like I judged them against like an AF that was like pretty common to the circuit, but they were like, oh, I didn't even know this was topical. And so like as they kind of went on, and I judged them, I think in maybe quarters or semis, like they like did a lot better. And so I thought it was really cool that they developed over the course of just during the tournament and had an amazing outcome.
Yeah. And then I would say there were a couple of like first semester debaters that really, I think, showed up at the Gorlock in ways that they hadn't at fall tournaments. So like Sebastian Gloss from Florida State University is not somebody if you would have told me before the tournament that Sebastian was clearing at the Gorlock, I'd have said, maybe, I mean, and that's a huge performance. And then Peyton Louders, who was a novice at the beginning of the year, debating a novice at Western Kentucky, going 4-2 at the Gorlock is just wildly impressive.
Wow.
This is somebody like I judged at Western Kentucky and was like, she will be good, but she's going to have to like develop over the course of a couple years. And you show up the next semester and she's going 4-2 and open. Like that is a huge advancement. So those would be, aside from like the new entries, those are my surprises from the fall that like clearly put in some work over the break to get better or to strategize how they were going to win more debates than they had been winning at previous times.
I got to give a personal shout out to Chase Shockley also. This was also I think this was his first open break. So yeah, he was 3-3, I think, but managed to get in there as either the 15th or 16th seed.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it was super cool for him because like he had done a ton of work over break and like made it a personal goal. Like I want to clear at my first tournament and make it the Gorlock. So I thought that was awesome.
Wow. Yeah, and he just squeezed in there. You're right. He was at the 16th seed.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at some of the big breaks as far as schools go. Looks like Washburn and Truman each had 3. Am I counting that right?
Yep.
Wow.
It's a year of parity, I would say. Like it's at these tournaments, and maybe it's the nature of the tournaments, but it seems like no one's like bringing like 8 people and breaking all 8. Like it's people are getting 3, people are getting 2. It's really not like an overwhelming kind of like swarm from any one school.
Yeah, nice. I mean, each of y'all had 2 breaks, right? Western Kentucky and Nebraska.
Yeah.
All right, that's good.
And then I think North Texas also had 2, right? Gabby and Zach both broke.
Oh, I see it.
Gabby broke and Zach broke.
Yep.
Okay. Am I wrong? Have I not been seeing Simpson as a school breaking in general? Or
Simpson hasn't really been attending a bunch of major nationals. They're primarily an IPDA school and a public school. But they do have debaters who do LD. Ryan Magelhace, I think, was at the Gorlock, debated a bit in the fall. So they have a few people who do LD, but they also tend to not focus on the national circuit tournaments as much. I think this is the first major national we saw Simpson at so far this year.
Okay. So it breaks to aux, and one of the things I'm noticing is that you don't break brackets here, huh?
Nope.
Oh, we had 2 pairings up against their own schools, Truman and Washburn. And they just advanced the higher seed on each one.
Typically, it's determined by the coach. Like I would say that for the most part, most universities, most coaches I talk to say the higher seed advances unless there's like an illness or something going on.
Oh, right.
Kind of preserves like you did the work in prelims, you deserve the walkover and elims kind of feel to it.
Right.
But I would say, like, especially in a year like this with parity, it's almost rare to see these kind of early walkovers.
Oh, right.
I would expect them later in quarterfinals or semifinals if those debaters win in a couple of brackets. But yeah, I didn't think this was very, very likely going into the tournament because the parity. It's very interesting how it did land out.
Was that a little bit of chatter at the tournament when the two schools had to do walkovers?
Not as much. I think people kind of expect it on bigger squads these days.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's take a look at some of these. Were there any upsets? Does not look like there was any upsets in this first.
Not in the first round.
Not in the first one, huh? Oh yeah, looks like all of them. Okay. Western. Okay. Oh, Western Kentucky had a second seed. Very nice. Oh, that's Ray, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. She always kills it. Okay. So let's see here. If there's no real upsets happening, that means everyone in quarters is top 10 seed.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Man, that is just a stacked quarterfinals right there.
And I would imagine, I didn't judge any of these debates, but I would imagine every one of these debates was really high quality too, because these are pretty evenly matched debates for the most part in quarterfinals. Every one of these, I think, is kind of a coin flip on strategy, judging, debater choicing around.
But it does look like in the quarterfinals, looks like the closest thing to an upset though is the Simpson debater, overcoming UNT. So, any knowledge about what happened in that round, or were people expecting that? Was that a big upset?
Yeah, I remember. So North Texas was affirmative, and they read an advocacy that's about trans rage, and they talk about the connection between nuclear weapons and the development of the nuclear family, and sort of like the way that typical debates on nuclear weapons sort of like ignore that relationship and the sort of like co-development of those two trends. And they sort of like use a performative method of rage, and they read poetry. It's super cool. And then the negative from Simpson kind of like was like bet and engaged. And they utilized, I believe, I want to say music. To kind of express dissatisfaction or like sort of like as their in-round counter method. And it was a super close debate from what I understand. And Simpson was the victor. I remember because one of my GAs judged that round and they wanted to talk about it.
Okay. Yeah, I heard about that nuclear family critique. I thought that was fascinating because just obviously the use of the term nuclear in the multiple ways that it is fascinating. So
yeah.
But they just really engaged it, huh? They didn't.
They may have read framework, but I know that the sort of like final argument was not about topicality. It was about comparing two performances and sort of like discussing the extent to which they had performed effectively in the round.
Okay, here we go. Simpson. I'm looking at. Yeah. So that was over, right? F against opponent Western. Okay. That was quarters, right? Am I getting this right? Okay. Where am I? Oh, I lost myself. There we are. All right. Excellent. So, but all the others seem to go pretty straight up. Were there any other notable rounds? Did anybody know what's happening in any of the other quarterfinal rounds about how that went down?
I think Chad judged one of them. Chad judged the Alicia Stout Zach Jones round, which is probably the closest matchup in that round.
Yeah, that was a barn burner. The Zach Jones's AF was conventional, it was just NFU, and then the negative from Alicia, I think it was a new critique. It was exploring sort of like the way that discussions of nuclear weapons are gendered and how realist international relations in terms of its strategy and approach sort of subordinates knowledge that is like coded as feminine. And Zach won the debate. It's very close. It was a 2-1. I think every judge was kind of like, I could have honestly gone either way. Both performed very well. And I think Zach won just kind of defending the conventional sort of like form of international relations being both not particularly pernicious and also good for increasing international security.
Okay. all the others. So that brings us to, so that's quarters. In the semis, we have Missouri Valley versus North Texas. This is the one in the 4. And you're saying, oh yeah, and she earned that spot there. Okay. And then in the other, we have Western Kentucky versus Simpson. So we got any background on what happened in either and or both of these rounds?
I judged one and we lost the other one. So okay, so in the round in Ray versus Simpson, we lost on Ray lost on T on technicality. So we had broken a new affirmative at the tournament.
Okay.
We had actually watched at Northwestern, I think. Maybe it was the Shirley. It was an NDT tournament, and we watched Michigan break this affirmative. It was about nuclear weapon free zones in Central Asia, South America, and then in like the Australia place. I always forget the acronym for that. And it was about sort of like ratifying those. And Simpson went for extra T and had kind of talked about some parts of those treaties that were ratified that may not be a part of the role of nuclear weapons.
Okay, so
and the judges were unconvinced that the AF was T. Which I don't know. That happens. You break a new AF. You haven't had that many debates on it. Sometimes you get got, right?
Yeah. It's also interesting. I wonder if Michigan is still doing it. I wonder if what other teams are doing it, possibly, if they're running into the same problem at all.
I don't think Michigan kept reading it. So their topic's also different than ours. So like they ironically, in the debate that we watched Michigan, they lost on a 3-0 on topicality to Harvard. So hilariously, we repeated the same error that we just watched. But they basically lost on that nuclear weapon free zones weren't NFUs. So we lost on that the sort of like content of the treaty wasn't relevant to the role of nuclear, or it was external to the role of nuclear weapons, which most people agree is to like deter attacks on the U.S.
Okay.
I will say that we tried the exact same argument in octafinals against Ray and were unsuccessful. So it was kind of the primary strategy, I think, answering Ray's affirmative at this tournament was trying to figure out a way to convince judges that it was extra topical. At least that was the first take on it, and I'm not surprised that's the strategy Simpson went for against that affirmative.
Okay. Yeah. You're saying that she broke this affirmative against y'all, and you went for T and didn't win, or am I?
Well, I think Ray broke this AF at the beginning of the tournament. I think this was kind of their Gorlock AF.
It wasn't in elims. Okay.
No, and then we debated them in octafinals, having like some time to think about it. And
got it.
Thinking that like topicality was our best option. We just didn't execute or didn't have the judges. I couldn't tell you which, but like it's a balance of like execution and judge preference. And I think Autumn had probably slightly different arguments, slightly different articulations, probably like knew that they were going to go for T starting that debate. And we went into that debate thinking, it's one of 3 or 4 options we could go for.
Got it.
I'm pretty sure Simpson probably put all their chips into the T bucket early on. And that probably helps with like managing this a little bit more.
Especially, it's a shorter debate too. You know what I mean? Right. And so you really have to make decisions early.
Yep.
In those ones. Okay.
Yeah. And I judged the other semifinal. That was fun. So Sage basically just went for impact turns against the affirmative. She went for modernization of nuclear weapons is good. Basically, NFU, basically everyone's solvency card is by Nina Tannenwald, which is an author that we covered on the pod. And one of Nina's arguments is that if we do an NFU, we'll do a bunch of other things that would sort of make it credible. One of those is that we would end nuclear modernization, and Sage impact turned to that and argued nuclear modernization was good.
Okay.
For deterrence, for crisis stability, etc. And then read a lot of defense against the rest of the AF about like the chance of miscalculation, etc. And it was just like a close case debate, honestly. Like it was cool because I most of Sage's wiki has been going for the critique. So she showed a lot of flexibility, I thought, having like a really good just like case throwdown.
Yeah. And I don't know if Sage is planning on attending NFA. I think that might still be up in the air, but I would say that like their ability that they showed in this debate to like go for impact turns makes them one of the like maybe most dangerous debaters at nationals this year.
Okay.
Because the debaters that are really good at nationals are ones that are super flexible, ones that can literally just turn a switch on and go for a policy argument if they need to, you know, or go for impact turns when they've got the favorable panel. Because I mean, if I was looking at that panel, I'd say go for impact turns too, you know.
Well, it looks like they're doing something right because it was still a split decision in that one, right? And and from what y'all been telling me about Zach, that's no easy feat right there.
Yep.
Okay. All right, final round. UNT versus Simpson. What happened here?
Well, let's see.
Simpson was AF. I know that.
Simpson, yep.
Okay.
And Zach was neg. Simpson reads an FU. Gosh, people have got to be just kind of like, is there anything else to talk about?
Yeah.
Other than nuclear no first use. From what I understand, it was like a pretty conventional debate. AF was an FU. Neg was like your standard array of arguments. And I mean, reports are there was just like more technical precision from the neg.
Oh, okay.
And I would imagine that's because Zach's probably done a lot more debating this year.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
This is one of those debates like you're at the end of a tournament and Zach you're tired and you're relying on like instinct.
Right.
And Zach's also been debating both LD and policy circuits. And I think a lot of times when you've done a lot of NDTC stuff, a lot of that stuff becomes second nature. And so when you hear that like, oh, this debate was decided a little bit more technical by the negative, I think experience and like repetition in rounds probably have a lot to do with that, why they were successful.
Okay. I forget. This is not the first tournament Zach's won this year.
This is second or third?
It was two.
Two?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, he is setting himself up to be like the favorite at nationals, looks like. At least one of them, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So congratulations to him, to North Texas, to both of you. Like y'all are doing something right. You're bringing plenty of teams. You're and some high level debaters as well. So congrats.
Yeah, we had some. It was like such a sad day when I was like, wait, our reward for second seed is Zach.
Zachary Wallenberg also had one of those really tough draws where they debated Zach Jones. Did we debate Ray?
I think
in
so.
round 3.
No, I think we debated Zach like twice, and it was just like, this is unfair. Like, how is this like? Could be on my like. I would consider like, for any given debate against any person on the circuit, I don't know that it's better than a coin flip with Zach. And so like I was like, this sucks.
Yeah.
All right.
And then was it Zach or Grant and Chase, or Grant and Nick had a debate round 6, right?
Yes.
And that's got to be like a round 6 where you've got like two people who are clearly going to get out of NFA debating.
Yeah.
So I think overall, though, I mean, it kind of hashed out the way I figured it would, right? Some people who probably should have cleared didn't because the tournament's tough and you had some time off.
Right.
Some people who shouldn't have cleared did clear because they just put in a little bit of extra effort. Alicia Stout was top speaker again, which I was not surprised by. Alicia's just been cooking this year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as much as Ray and Zach can pull debates out of the hat in close debates, Alicia just sounds technically proficient and on top of it. And every argument that comes out of Alicia's mouth is like, yep, that's the best form of that argument, right? And so she is really kind of showing that even if she's not winning those close debates in elims, she's performing throughout the tournament as well as anybody could expect her to.
All right. Well, it's a great start to the second half of the season. Like you said, this is changing gears, looking toward nationals. But the next big tournament, the one that probably most NFA LD teams are looking toward is the Grand Prix. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
When does that take place?
Third week of March.
Yeah, March 16th and 17th.
Okay. We will definitely talk about that recap after then. Next week, we're going to be coming back and we'll be talking about helpful tips on cross-examination, prep time, how to use those sort of ancillary parts of the debate. All right. I want to thank you all again, Justin, Chad, for giving me some insight on that since I can't be at these places. Thank you so much.
Thanks a bunch, Jared.
Thank you.
All right.